Welcome, everyone. This is Mary Duskwood, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, one of our data engineering recruiters, Natalie Rubenstein, and I will be sharing the results of our very first salary report for data engineers. For those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we're an executive recruiting firm specializing in fields like data science, analytics, marketing research, and of course, data engineering. Over the past several years, Burtch Works market insights have been repeatedly mentioned in the press, including The Economist, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and the Chicago Tribune, among many others. Burtch Works has also been recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms for several years running, including this year, 2021. And now a quick introduction to your speakers. Natalie came to Burtch Works from the technical recruiting sector with a strong background in business development and long-term relationship building. She has significant experience identifying contract to permanent, and permanent positions in the areas of IT, business applications, telecommunications, and engineering. And she is an integral member of our data engineering team. As for me, I'm Mary Duskwood, and I'm Burtch Works' leading research expert. I manage our various research projects, including our 3 salary reports, all of our surveys, and other content, which has included improving our research process over the past 6 years. You may have heard me on some of our other webinars and YouTube videos as well. And speaking of our research, before we get into the data, I wanted to quickly mention a few things about our reports. While this is our first salary study for data engineering, we have been putting together salary reports for our main specialty areas for 9 years. Over that time, we've heard from countless clients, hiring managers, and professionals that they use our reports to set compensation for their teams or to negotiate their own comp packages. Natalie and I will share the highlights today, but be sure to download the whole report to get more details. We collect our data through interviews instead of an online survey, so a big thank you for everyone who's trusted Burtch Works with sharing their information so that we can share these reports with everybody in the community. And we do it for free. Many of you have likely seen our survey results and maybe even participated in some of those. So a big thank you for that as well. As I mentioned, this is our first data engineering salary report, and we had 320 data engineers in the sample. The full report has over 30 pages of compensation, demographic data, hiring market analysis, qualitative trends, and more. So make sure to download the full report at birchworks.com/study for free, and you'll get all of the insights. Today's highlights will include how we define the data engineering profile and segment the sample, demographic analysis and trends, 2021 salaries and bonuses, as well as some of the developing data engineering marketing trends we're seeing. And then we'll close out with some of your questions. And now I'm going to pass things over to Natalie to get us started.
Perfect. So since this is our first salary report on data engineers, before we dive into the data, we wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about how we define data engineers for our study sample. As far as educational background, most of the time we see a bachelor's or master's degree, typically in computer science, information systems. On the right, you see some examples of typical job titles, but we'll dig into more of that later. As all of you are likely aware, data engineering is a field with many tools, and it's not uncommon to see a very extensive tools section on a resume or job description. These tools can include programming languages like Python, cloud computing tools like AWS or GCP, relational and NoSQL databases, big data technologies like Hadoop, reporting or BI tools like Tableau or Power BI, and you may also see tools like Databricks or Airflow. There is no singular tool that makes someone a data engineer, and we find that most data engineers will have a broad set of experience with many tools. So what skills do data engineers have? Typical skills may include building data pipelines in ETL or ELT, experience with complex distributed computing, ability to work with structured and unstructured data, deployment of data science models, experience with data science applications, and experience with continuous integration working with Docker and Kubernetes. For typical job responsibilities, here are some examples. Build and scale large batch data pipelines and real-time ETL pipelines. Gather business requirements and implement data processes. Design and support data lakes and data marts. Work with data scientists to deploy machine learning models. And troubleshoot models in a production environment to ensure accuracy. All right, now that you have a better understanding of the types of professionals we're looking at, let's get into the data. Mary will get us started.
Thank you, Natalie. First, we're going to start with our demographic analysis, and we'll get into a few trends as well. Here you can see the education breakdown. While 67% of all professionals in the sample held an advanced degree, PhDs are fairly rare, only 5.3% of our sample. While professionals with a bachelor's degree represent about a third of the sample, we found that having a master's degree is often a plus for data engineers seeking new opportunities because that can make you stand out during the hiring process. Next, we have the gender breakdown. Compared to data science and analytics, data engineering is the field with the highest proportion of men at 87.5%. Our 2021 data science sample was 83% men, and analytics was 75% men. And here are a few of the data engineering demographic trends that we saw. While data engineering and data science are very different fields, these professionals often work closely together. And with the increasing prevalence of hybrid type roles, we're often asked a lot of questions about the differences between their backgrounds and skill sets. One of the most notable differences that we found is their typical education backgrounds, including highest degree earned as well as typical fields of study. In our sample, we found the most common degree for data engineers is a master's degree at 62%, followed by a bachelor's degree at 32%, while PhDs were rare at about 5%. By stark contrast, the most common degree for data scientists in our 2021 report was a PhD with 49% of the sample, followed by a master's degree with 45%, and only 6% held a bachelor's as their highest degree earned. Since it is much more difficult to find data engineering talent with a PhD, making this a requirement for your new hires may make your search a bit more limited. Data engineers will typically have a degree in computer science or information systems. And although some may have business analytics or statistics degrees, these may not be as desirable since they may not offer as strong of a coding and technology background as the computer science route. While many data scientists have computer science or engineering degrees, there are also many with the math, statistics, or natural science backgrounds, which are very uncommon among data engineers. Another interesting difference between our data engineering and data science samples was the distribution of professionals by years of experience. While we don't have historical data on our data engineer candidates to compare to, in previous years, our data science sample has skewed noticeably younger, as media attention and the hiring boom drew a substantial number of students and early career professionals into the field. By comparison, the distribution of data engineers by years experience in this report is much more even. This is potentially due to fields like software engineering being very established and some of those more experienced professionals making their way into data engineering roles over the years. However, as there has been more hiring and increased focus on data engineering as a specialty, we're seeing more students and early career professionals specifically studying to become data engineers. This may mean that in the coming years, the distribution could shift to show more fresh talent coming onto the job market. When examining the industries of employment for data engineers, it's clear that the data engineering field is experiencing a hiring push toward healthcare, similar to the trend we've observed in our data science and analytics samples. While the tech industry is largely considered to be highly paid and a well-represented employer of many data engineers and data scientists, there's been a significant hiring push over the last few years to expand data teams in the healthcare industry. In fact, over the past 5 years, we've seen the percentage of analytics professionals employed in healthcare nearly triple. And the healthcare industry employs 18% of the data engineers in our sample. This is the third largest industry employer in that sample. This has become especially significant due to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, but At least from our data on other technology fields, this trend was already picking up steam long before 2020. And now we're not going to wait any longer. On to the compensation data, salaries and bonuses. Natalie, I will let you take it from here.
Perfect. So let's set the stage by examining the various job category profiles. We've already outlined the criteria for how we define data engineers, but we also segment the sample into 4 groups to better examine compensation. First, we determine whether a data engineer is an individual contributor, also known as an IC, or a manager, also known as an MG, whether they have management responsibilities. We have 2 levels for ICs and 2 for MGs, depending on the type of work that the individual is doing. So for individual contributors, level 1, they're most likely going to be early career professionals, generally within the first 5 years of their career. Level 2 are experienced data engineers, including senior through principal level professionals with no management responsibilities. As for managers, level 1 is project team-oriented managers. Titles may include lead, manager, senior manager, or associate director. And level 2 are strategic leaders responsible for data-driven business outcomes. This includes senior directors, VPs, and heads of. Here are the salary medians for each of the job levels. So for IC1, we're sitting at about 106,000. IC2, we have more of a significant jump to 150K. MG1 is right about at 170K, and MG2 with another significant jump to 228. We were also able to share data on bonuses, which you can see here. Bonus eligibility in this field is very high. 80% of IC level 1s are bonus eligible, which goes up to 88% for senior ICs and 95 to 96% of managers. We see 3 main types of bonuses. Some of our clients may distribute one of these, but we've also seen employers do all 3. These may include bonuses based on an individual's performance, based on a team's performance, and then based on company performance. Also, in case of startups, we sometimes see bonuses replaced with stock options. Now, although we don't have historical data to compare for data engineering, when examining the data for our data science and analytics study, leading indicators are pointing to salary increases over the coming year. And because of the data engineering hiring market, it's also been quite active. We're predicting these increases will happen for data engineering as well. Some of the main drivers for this include a very strong economy and optimistic markets. Work from home impacts. Opportunities to interview are much easier now. Also, candidates are no longer restricted to companies that are local to them. Candidates changing jobs are fielding multiple offers and are able to negotiate higher salaries.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here just to say that every time I talk to any of the recruiters on their team, they're always telling me that where there's one offer right now, there's at least 2 or 3 more coming for every given candidate, basically. So definitely an active market out there.
For sure. There's also a pent-up hiring demand. We've heard from many hiring managers that they're completely frustrated at the turnover on their teams, and the really challenging hiring market they're facing. Recently, I've had hiring managers ask me to go to the candidate after final rounds and get the salary that they will 100% move for with no negotiating and no backouts. They'd rather pay more in the offer than go through the process again with another candidate. We've also seen some clients doing random salary increases. We've been hearing about bosses giving increases to employees preemptively in an attempt to stem attrition for crucial members of their data team. So what are some of the other data engineering hiring market trends we're seeing? As we just mentioned, the 2021 hiring market is booming. Many data engineers were understandably nervous about making a job change in 2020, but are now back in the market in full force. Many professionals are curious and interviewing opportunistically due to the vast amount of remote roles open to the talent, regardless of where they currently reside, even if they're not seriously considering a change. Additionally, some professionals aren't necessarily curious about new roles. They're using job offers and interview activity as a benchmark to see if they're getting paid appropriately, or they're looking to leverage a job offer to negotiate a raise at their current company. I think this goes without saying, but we do not recommend this. Our survey on Q3, Q4 hiring plans represents over 125 companies across the United States. We found that 81% of data teams are planning to hire in Q3, Q4 of 2021. This contrasts with the same survey results from the beginning of this year, which showed that 73% of teams had planned to hire in the first half of 2021. It's interesting to note that in the beginning of 2020, pre-pandemic, 67% of teams were planning to hire in the first half of 2020. Companies are racing forward with their digital transformation efforts, and sophisticated use of data is now just table stakes to stay in the game. We've also seen that the scramble to secure data engineering talent has undoubtedly shifted the approach to hiring over the past few years. And this shift is not solely due to the pandemic. Analyzing the number of professionals we've placed in data engineering and data science from the first half of 2021 compared to 2019 shows that remote hiring has tripled. Roughly a quarter of our open roles right now on data teams have full-time remote work as an option, and over the past 3 to 4 months especially, we've seen more roles skew towards remote options. This is partly due to candidates prioritizing flexibility and work-life balance, but also due to companies shifting their remote work policies to be more competitive in an incredibly hot job market. Some larger employees with well-developed work from home capabilities, such as West Coast tech firms, are expanding their talent searches nationwide. This means that there are more data engineers presented with a wider array of options than ever before. The migration to the cloud is continuing to accelerate. This has many advantages, including cost and time savings, reliability, and mobility. Among both data engineers and their employers, we're seeing a strong preference for AWS, Azure, and GCP, and an increasingly definitive move away from Hadoop in many cases. While AWS has typically been the leading cloud platform in terms of our clients' needs, this year we've seen GCP become a much more prominent player than in previous years. Strong talent is drawn to organizations that are using the latest tools and technologies to push the business forward. So the tech stack is often a key concern for many data engineers when evaluating career moves. Especially now, a lack of cloud experience is very limiting for data engineers seeking new opportunities. And because data engineer is a discipline that usually requires extensive tool knowledge with a wide variety of tools, being proficient in multiple cloud platforms is the best way to stay marketable. A few additional tool trends we've observed include Snowflake and Kubernetes. Snowflake has become highly popular technology, especially with the continued transition to the cloud because it's flexible, user-friendly, and can support all 3 major cloud platforms. It also makes building data pipelines easier. We've also seen Kubernetes become more widely used as there's an increase in data engineering roles that are requiring more DevOps responsibilities. During our discussions with data engineering leaders, we're often consulted about typical reporting structures and team organization in this specialty. What we found is that this can vary widely from organization to organization, but we wanted to share a few of our observations from working with many different teams and employers in this space. In data engineering, we found that these middle or lower level management roles are not as common as they are in our data science and analytics samples. In fact, we speak with a lot of technical leaders without any direct reports, so our sample has a very strong representation in IC level 2. Regarding reporting structure, a team might have a data architect reporting to a VP of analytics or data science, but we've also seen some teams where data engineering is classified under IT. Additionally, there are teams where some data engineers are both under the data science and analytics teams and IT. At the senior leadership level in data engineering, we tend to see a blend of data science and data engineering backgrounds, where strong leaders will likely have a strategic mindset, business knowledge, leadership capabilities, and polish, but there is generally not as much emphasis on the ability to be hands-on with technical work. Now back to Mary to talk about our latest research on what's keeping data professionals at their jobs.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That was a lot of really great information. So we recently sent out a survey asking professionals about what keeps them at their current roles. So the conversation around work as we know it is changing in 2020, as we all know. And as more data engineers evaluate career options, we really wanted to know what convinces someone to stay at a particular role instead of changing jobs. We asked our network to share their top 3 factors with us, which you can see here. And as one might expect, base salary increase was the most popular choice, with 43% of people choosing that option, which is in stark contrast to bonuses, which came in at 19%. So that's something to keep in mind, is that while variable compensation can definitely be a plus, a base salary increase is definitely preferred. Then we had 3 different options tie pretty closely for second place at 41%. And that includes good management or leadership, flexibility like working from home, flexible hours, etc., and interesting or challenging work projects. On a similar note, several of the people that responded other mentioned that meaningful work was important to them. So making a positive impact in a role can be very important for long-term job satisfaction. And with more hiring on the horizon, we can only imagine what the data will show us in next year's report. And now there's just a few quick announcements before we get to the Q&A. So if you haven't sent your questions in, be sure to do that. We shared a lot of info here today, but if you're looking for even more, our full report is over 30 pages and breaks down salaries by quartiles, looks at salary means as well as medians, examines additional demographic insights, qualitative insights, market trends, and includes insights from our other hiring market research. And you can download it for free at burtchworks.com/study. If you're looking to add to your data engineering staff, we'd be happy to speak with you and do some brainstorming about what you might have planned in terms of hiring before the end of the year. We offer contingency and retained services from entry-level data engineers all the way up to VP or head of data engineering searches, as well as a plethora of data engineering specialties. And we also offer contract staffing, sourcing and placement as well. So don't forget to send us an email, info@burtchworks.com, and we'd be happy to chat. For more hiring market insights, check out burtchworks.com/blog, where you can find additional survey results on hiring trends, work from home, and more, as well as career and hiring tips specifically tailored for the data engineering market. And to stay up to date on our latest research, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And on our YouTube channel, found at youtube.com/burtchworks, you can find our other data engineering videos, including 2021 data engineering predictions, hiring tips, career tips, and resume tips as well. And now it looks like we definitely have at least a few minutes for some questions. So please feel free to send any more in through the chat, but we're gonna jump right in. Our first question is around titles. So it's from someone who says, I've seen the titles analytics engineer and data engineer. What's the difference?
Perfect. So I think as far as this question, DBT really coined the phrase analytics engineer. And so far we have seen a few positions come through. Generally speaking, analytics engineers are going to somewhere be in between a data engineer and a data analyst. Based on the job descriptions that we've seen come through, analytics engineers are working more with clean data sets and modeling data in a way that helps end users answer their own questions versus data engineers who are going to be helping build up an infrastructure.
Oh, great. Yeah, I know we're hearing a lot more about different kinds of hybrid roles, so it sounds like that might be another one. All right, our next question is something we're hearing about all the time. No one's surprised, and that's what are companies planning to do for long-term or future work from home remote opportunities? So I'm going to get started here because I hear a lot from all of the recruiters about the companies and leaders they're talking to. And also, we've done some of our own research, and basically our biggest conclusion is everything's changing so fast. So I know we did some surveys, last year we did some earlier research on what work from home plans were, and everything has changed since then, with COVID, still around despite the vaccine, and companies trying to stay competitive in a market where people are really coming to see flexibility and working from home almost as is definitely a more common option. I think that we're just in a really transitional period, and it's going to depend on what company you're looking at, what they're, what industry they're in. I know some industries are going to be more likely to be remote than others. What their historical policy has been, and how successful they are finding talent locally versus if they need to branch out to something a little more wider in order to get the talent they need.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think um, along that route, we are seeing people, companies who are going to a full work from home status are really working on their company culture. So that I think is going to play a big part in this. I've heard a lot of my clients talking about things that they're implementing as far as doing, game times on Friday where they all get together. Or learning sessions for everyone to join during the week, just so that there's still that kind of camaraderie that they're missing being work from home.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely a different situation. Um, Next question is we've got a couple people that have been asking about differences in the hiring market for data engineers regionally. I think this actually plays pretty well into the question about work from home and remote work. This is our first data engineering study, so we don't have historical data to compare to. But as we were talking about with the level of remote opportunities we're seeing this year compared to previous years, it's definitely becoming more common, and uh, a lot of candidates find it very desirable. What's I think going to be interesting, and we talked about this for data science and analytics as well, is going to be salary differences. As some people might take advantage of remote work opportunities to move to lower cost of living areas, and will that affect base salaries? Is a California tech firm going to be willing to pay Bay Area salaries to somebody living in Montana? Or are they going to tailor base salaries according to cost of living? So we'll see how that's going to affect salaries in years to come. And we'll see if that kind of has a bit of a migration away from, the coasts and other traditional tech hubs, and where that goes as far as region. I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that trend. Our next question, I think Natalie, you'll be able to speak to this pretty well, is do you have any advice to teams that are hiring data engineers?
Yeah, so I think, based on the study, teams should look to be flexible with remote options for talent. If remote isn't an option, it's important for leaders to be understanding as things come up and people need to work from home and communicate to them ahead of time. I'd also highly suggest taking a look at your hiring process and seeing if there's any steps that can be combined or eliminated. I've talked to many candidates recently who want to understand the time commitment of interviewing. And sometimes if it's too long, they don't want to move forward with candidacy. So taking a look at that and really understanding if there's any way that we can, shrink the time from, resume submittal to an offer letter is important. A lot of our candidates, like Mary said, are getting 2 to 3 offers at one time, and it's usually all within about a week and a half. So definitely shrinking that time.
Yeah, it's always good to be the first person in, I think, with your
Hmm.
offer. Um, all right, and I think we're going to do one final question here, Natalie. Another one I think
Yeah,
you'll be able to speak to. Kind of on the other side of things, how do I, as a data engineer, make sure to stand out in a active hiring market like this one?
sure. Resumes are always a great first impression, so focus on that. As we mentioned, it's common to have a laundry list of technologies and skills on your resume, but make sure you're also describing the business problem that you were helping solve in your position. That's going to be really important for your future employers to take a look at. Also, we've seen, I think more recently, a lot of candidates adding technologies to their resume that they aren't proficient in. And after kind of talking to them more and digging in, they kind of back down on their experience level. And we definitely don't want to send that over to a hiring manager. So make sure that your resume is really airtight. And along with that, I always suggest tailoring your resume to each job. It's a lot of work, but it definitely increases the chance of getting that first interview.
Yep, as everyone knows, first impressions are very important. And as a kind of a final plug for our content, take a look at our YouTube channel. We have a video about specifically resume tips for data engineers. So that might be helpful, especially if you're early in your career and haven't written that many resumes yet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions. It's been a really great time putting together this webinar and this research for you. So I hope everyone finds it helpful. And thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to download the whole study, again, that's at www.burtchworks.com/study. And that's for free. The full report is over 30 pages. And if you have any additional questions or want to talk about your career or any hiring on your own data engineering team, please reach out. You can email us at info@burtchworks.com. Thanks so much for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.